IVM.
Welcome to The Origin of Things. Episode 29. Let's talk about brands from unusual places. If you were to plot amazing world-renowned brands from around the world from their country of origin, you wouldn't be too surprised to see which countries kind of dominate, right? The US and the UK would lead the pack, with Germany, Italy and Japan supplying a lot of automobiles, and certainly one or two brands from other countries. Sweden has IKEA and Spotify. IKEA, they tell me. Denmark has Lego. Australia, has Billabong and Vegemite, I suppose. Nationalists back home will argue that we too have several great brands here in India. Never mind that many of them were either propelled by the British or now bankrolled from Japanese or American venture funds. But forget about that. We don't want to get into controversy. Let's talk about Southeast Asia. No. I'm not talking about, startups or local e-commerce players that are popular in their country, but I'm talking about world-dominating brands that everybody around the planet has heard of and maybe even used. This is probably the biggest brand to ever come out of Thailand. It's more surprising that it's a pharmaceutical brand. Chaleo Uvidya. Not a name that adorns the walls of trendy co-working spaces these days, but that didn't stop him from becoming the third richest man in his country by the time of his death in 2012. Mostly thanks to the fact that he owned 51% of one of the biggest brands in the world. The son of poor immigrants from China, he ended up setting a small pharmaceutical company and in 1976 devised a formula that solved a major problem among the country's blue-collar workers. And soon, his medicine became immensely popular. The current CEO of that firm, still based in Bangkok by the way, says, at first, it was not very popular actually. It was quite different from other offerings in the market, and Mr. Chaleo first focused on upcountry markets rather than cities where other competitors concentrated. Indeed, the competitors sold their version more like a traditional medicine, but Chaleo tried something different. Chaleo, by the way, kind of rhymes with paleo. Anyway, but Chaleo tried something different, making the taste different too. Still, the broader category's association with Thailand's lower middle class was too hard to shake off domestically, despite decent success with exports to countries like Hong Kong and Singapore. Finally, it was a European toothpaste salesman who came to Thailand, one assumes to sell toothpaste, but who knows. He came across this medicine and found that it really helped him with his particular problem. So he tracked down TC Pharmaceutical Industries, the company that Chaleo founded, and said, hey, listen, this medicine that you got here has potential. I know a lot of folks back home in Europe who could use this, and not just the working class types who might benefit from it. So the European fella, he tweaked the formula a little to suit Western tastes, and instead of targeting it to the workers, went right to the top, placing it at high-end hospitality where the well-heeled would visit. Soon, word of this wondrous medicine and its properties spread, and the brand, still technically a Thai brand, was making waves. As the brand became more popular, so inevitably did the fate of so many pharmaceutical brands, knockoffs. There were many imitators, and those even using the same name, but probably none was more popular than a brand in Thailand itself called Krating Daeng. This brand was a lower price version of the medicine and was so blatantly similar to the original, down to the logo and the literal translation of the English name. In fact, it's still sold today legally. Other knockoffs haven't had such luck. Millions of copies are frequently picked up by authorities, but Krating Daeng endures. Maybe a reason is the two are actually related? Confused? Let me explain. You see, Chaleo, this Thai fellow who made that medicine and allowed the European dude to tweak his formula, well, he actually retained the original formula and continued selling it in his home market of Thailand. Yes, indeed, the so-called counterfeit Krating Daeng actually came first. And while its formula was modified for the Western world, it continued being a brand of its own. This way, its owner, TC Pharmaceuticals and Chaleo, had the best of both worlds. Krating Daeng for the low end of the market and 51% of the company that owned the high-end Western version, which was a huge hit around the world, making Chaleo a very, very, very wealthy man instead. I'd like you to keep that number in mind, 51%, which means, and you don't need to be an MBA from an IIM for this, you're a majority shareholder and pretty much own the company. In fact, the current CEO of this Thai company laments that nobody thinks the Western version of the brand is actually from his country. He once said, "I feel sad when I read someone saying that the brand is no longer Thai. It is still a Thai brand, and it is still family owned," he says in an interview with the Bangkok Post. And so it is that a medicine that was once used to solve tiredness in long-distance Thai truck drivers became a byword for adventure and stunts. And, well, let's face it, staying up at parties or dorm rooms or coding the night away like you've seen in Silicon Valley. I'm not sure that two geeky, well-off engineers trying to make a new version of a software was what Chelio had in mind originally when he made his original formulation. And definitely not the logo, which depicted the Indian bison, whose Latin name is Bosgorus, the Gor. In fact, the original formulation paid tribute to this animal. Krating means Gor in Thai, and as for dying, well, as some of you might have worked it out, it is a color. Remember when I started, I mentioned that, all those countries with brands. There's a reason I didn't mention which country our European friend, who was so important in this brand becoming a global success, was from. Well, he was from Austria. And I knew the moment I said Austria, you would identify the brand, because there are enough buggers out there who know that it is a company based in Salzburg that ships out 7.5 billion cans a year to give the world wings. But it might come as a surprise to even those people that 51% of that company is owned by a Thai company, making it, for all practical purposes, a Thai brand by representation and by origin. A company called Red Bull. See you next week with another origin story. If you like this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us and all our shows on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcast.com. You can also follow us on social media. We are at IVM Podcast on Twitter and Instagram. If you want to reach out to me, that's Chuck_Gopal on Twitter and Chuck of All Trades on Instagram. All links in the show notes of this episode. See you next week.
I hope you enjoyed that show. I'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Paytm Money and Intel. We appreciate their support. It's been a fantastic week on the IVM network. I hope that you've been checking stuff out, but some of the highlights that you definitely should check out. Ashish Vidyarthi, host of Begin the Journey, was on Cyrus Says. They had a really fun conversation. I think you'll enjoy that. Uncle Please Sid did an episode around development, which was really, really fun. On Edges and Sledges, we had Adam Holyoke, former England captain. While those guys are killing it, one cricketer after the other. Definitely do check out Advertising is Dead. We talk about esports with some really guys who really know that space. Smile India, absolutely right. These guys are killing it as well. So is Pawan at Pragati. Don't forget The Origin of Things. Again, one of my favorite shows. You must check that out. And thanks for listening, and we hope to catch you again next week.
Namaskar, this is Ashish Vidyarthi. Yes, my friend, these are challenging times, but in these challenging times, we can create something extraordinary. Do take time to listen to my podcast, Begin the Journey, available on the IVM Podcast, website, app, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Remember, we have a great opportunity called life. Cheers.